Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to do some shearing with your fabric using elastic thread and your bobbin. So hi guys, my name's Amy and welcome to my sewing room and welcome to my sewing channel. So I bet you know what shearing is, but maybe haven't heard that term before or even know how to do it with your sewing machine. But it's really easy and it's actually one of my most favorite sewing techniques to do, especially in dresses. So let me show you what it is. This is a ready-to-wear jumpsuit, but it's got shearing all over the bodice and at the waist and on the sleeves. So you can see the rows of the shearing in there and how it just gently stretches. So if you have shearing in your clothes, you might not need a zipper or buttons to get it on. Anyway, this is the Moods free pattern called the Asheville dress. It's really cute, and so far it's been really easy to make. But on the back bodice, there is shearing at the top. So I lined it and did shearing in the liner. And then what the shearing is doing is just creating it to have a nice stretch so that I can pull it over my head and then it fits nice and snug around my body. So let's get started. So the things you're going to need are whatever fabric you want to use. And I'll talk about measurements in just a little bit. You will need elastic thread. So you can find it in different colors, but generally you might just want to have some white on hand, or black is pretty common as well. Elastic thread is just what it sounds like. So it is thread and it's got stretch to it like that. This goes into your bobbin. And then on your regular thread for the top side is just regular thread that you want to use. You will be sewing the shearing with your fabric right side up. So on the top thread, you can use a thread that's going to blend in well with whatever color of your fabric is, or maybe a contrasting color if you want to add some style to it. It doesn't matter, it's yours. Make it what you want to make. But then the bobbin thread is going to be this. So don't use this in the top. This is just in the bottom. So one thing to quick note is if you are shearing a part of your garment that's close to a hem, or maybe a neckline or a sleeve, you're going to want to go ahead and finish off the raw edges. If you're folding them under or serging them and folding them under and then hemming it, go ahead and do it before you do the shearing, because say if I was going to shear this piece of fabric, after it's sheared, it's going to be squished up quite a bit and it's hard to go back in there and try to fold over your hem and make that nice. One of the first things that I want to show you how to do is how to wind your bobbin. So you do not use the automatic bobbin winder that you might have on your sewing machine. You might think it's a great idea, but it's going to pull it too tight and then ultimately maybe breaking your elastic thread while you're sewing it. So if you know you're going to do a lot of shearing, like maybe you're doing something around a waist or a full bodice, go ahead and just wind your bobbins ahead of time. It'll just make your life easier as you're sewing. So when you're watching TV or something like that, then just grab a few bobbins and start winding. So what I do is I take my bobbin, the thread, and I go ahead and pull like a bunch of it off. In fact, sometimes I end up just having this sitting on my lap because it'll unroll a little bit faster. So the thread, as you start pulling out of the thread holder, it looks like it kind of starts twisting around a little bit. So you want to make sure you've got all this little twist and bunched up pieces all nice and straight. So I'm going to put this on my lap, and then what I like to do is, kind of doesn't matter which way around you start doing it because it'll go into the bobbin holder nice either way, is I just start winding it around with my right hand a couple of times, and then I hold the tail piece over with my left thumb or forefinger, whatever's more comfortable for you to do that, and hold that out of the way. I'm just going to start gently wrapping this around the bobbin. So not too tight, like you don't want to pull it tight, and then you don't want to have it all the way loose either. It's just a little pull, and then you'll just hand wind this around the bobbin as you go. And just fill it up. I wouldn't fill it up all the way, but as much as maybe 3/4 of the way is a good start. Once you've finished hand winding your bobbin with the elastic thread, it should look something like this. And I'm going to go ahead and cut off the tail, leave a couple inches, leave a few inches of the tail in there, and I'll show you why in a second because you'll need that. Okay, let's talk about your fabric width and how spaced out you want your shearing lines to be. So normally people would just do like a 1/2 inch gap between each shearing row on whatever they're working with. So on this jumpsuit, when I measured it, they're about a 1/2 inch away from each other. This was a practice piece that I did before making the actual dress so I could test out and see what I wanted. On this, I used chalk lines. So you can see in this picture, I measured out chalk lines about 1.5 inches away from each other because I wanted it to be a little bit loose and not so snug up on my back. And then when I was sewing, I just used my chalk lines as a guide to where I was going to go. And I think that that looks pretty nice too. So it can just be a style element. Some people might do a couple rows a 1/2 inch away from each other and then drop down 1 inch and then do 2 more small rows and then drop down another inch and do 2 more small rows. So I think that that's really cute too. So play around with it and see how you want to make it. You just want to make sure that there are enough rows in there where it is going to shrink and give you the fit that you're looking for the garment that you're working with. I'll give you some hints on fabric choices too. So this fabric happens to be a really nice rayon viscose. So it's a lighter weight fabric and it's sheared really, really nice. I would stick with lighter weight fabrics like a cotton or a linen. Linen wrinkles anyway, so you might as well just embrace it. A suiting fabric, anything like sheer or lightweight. A lighter denim, maybe, but a regular jeans type of denim, it probably is not going to work. And of course, anything heavier like a twill or a wool, it's not going to shear, so don't even try it. So think fabrics that you would have a sundress with, and that should work pretty good. Hey guys, I forgot to mention how much fabric you will need. So a general rule of thumb is you're going to want to have your starting fabric piece about 1.5 to 2 times the width of what your final sheared piece is going to look like. So if you are aiming for your final sheared piece to be about 10 inches wide, once it's all done, then you'll need about 15 to 20 inches the width of your fabric. So that's going to depend on the stitch length that you use. So keep in mind a longer stitch length is going to shear up your fabric even more. And it's also going to depend on how many rows of shearing that you have and how close together those are. So the more rows and the more close together they are, the more sheared up you're going to get. So keep that in mind if you're picking out your fabric for your shearing project. All right, let's go to the sewing machine and I'm going to show you another way where you can line up your rows without having to measure them ahead of time. All right, my bobbin is ready to go in the bobbin case. Now, you might think you could just drop it in and then thread this around just like you would any other bobbin, but you can't. You've got to do a couple of extra steps. So I have a Brother machine. It's the Brother SE600 sewing and embroidery machine. And I have found that the way I'm going to show you to put the bobbin in has worked the best for me. And then I'll show you another way to do it too. So let me push this back. I'm going to take the arm out and then I'm going to take off this needle plate. Just pop that off. And then I'm going to put the bobbin in the bobbin holder and wrap the bobbin elastic thread right around that silver thread guide. And then pull this extra tail to the back. So don't cut this, just leave it long. It's gonna be fine. And then put everything back. Needle plate back on, and then my arm back on. If you have a different type of machine, you might want to research or look for another YouTube video to see what they recommend. Some machines will have you go ahead and put the bobbin thread in as normal and then do the hand crank and put your needle down to go down and get the bobbin thread and pull it back up, and then pull the bobbin thread back behind you. So that's another way to do it too. But if you have a Brother machine and it's not working just right, like try to do it this way and see if that works better for you. All right, to set up my machine, I'm gonna use the needle position in the middle. And then I'm going to use the stitch length of a 4. And then hit OK. And that's ready to go. Here's a picture of how the shearing turned out when I used the stitch length at a 4 versus using the stitch length at a 2.5. And this is after I have steamed it. So you can see how much they gather up. The 4 stitch length at a 4 just shrinks it up a little bit more than the stitch length at the 2.5. All right, to get started, when your fabric is in and it's ready to go, you can backstitch it. I'm gonna do a couple. And then go ahead and start sewing your first line. And just a quick heads up, you might not see too much shearing gathering action going on just yet. So you will, but if it's just the first line, you're not going to see a whole lot of stretch going on just at first, and that's okay. It'll show up, I promise, as you add more lines, and then once we steam it, you'll really see that come together. The other thing to point out is your machine might squeak just a little bit with that elastic thread in there. So if you hear a little bit of squeak, don't be alarmed. It's all right, it's normal. Go on to the end. If I'm planning on doing a bunch of rows, once I get to the seam allowance, I'm going to go ahead and sew into the seam allowance just a little bit and raise my presser foot, lower my presser foot so the seam allowance is over here, and stitch down just a couple. And then raise my presser foot again and lower my presser foot. Now what I'm doing here is just using the width of my presser foot as my gauge of where I want the next row of stitching to go. And then I'll start sewing down my second row. So I'm just lining up the side of my presser foot with the first row of stitching. Okay, so I'm at the end of my second row, so I'm going to raise my presser foot, turn the fabric. So I've got the seam allowance going down here, and then I'm going to forward 3 stitches forward. I think last time I said 2, but I actually meant to do it 3. And lower my needle, raise my presser foot so I can turn the fabric again. And then lower my presser foot and go ahead and sew the third row. Okay, so that method is just called the ladder method of sewing. So that works great if you're just sewing a piece of fabric and it's just one panel and it's going to be sewn into your garment. Then you can use the ladder method. If you're working on sewing shearing, maybe around a waistband, then you can sew your garment all together and then just start a row of shearing and then just continue that all the way around the waistband, so you're not starting and stopping and starting a new row. So that's a couple different ways to do that as well. As you start getting a few rows done of the shearing, you will start to see it shrivel up just a little bit. And when you start sewing some of these rows, as you get down here a little bit further, you can use your hands just to guide the fabric, because you might need to use one hand just to stretch this out just a little bit. Not too tight, but you might need to stretch it just a little bit and guide the fabric as you go. All right, here's my sample. So I did 10 rows of shearing stitches, so it looks like this. This is before pressing. One thing I don't think I mentioned before is this piece of fabric was 14 inches wide before I started it. So after sewing the shearing rows, it's 9 inches wide right now, and then we'll measure it again after we iron it. So that's what the front looks like. This is what the back looks like so far, and then you can see the laddering stitches going down here. So with pressing this, you know your iron. I'm using a Rowenta iron, and you'll want to lay it out. And some people just steam it, hold the iron above it and just steam it, and then it shrinks up that way. So this is what it looks like after just holding the iron above it and just hitting the steam button. So that did pretty good. You can also just go ahead and put your iron right down on the fabric and iron over it, and that's going to shrink up even more. If your fabric is prone to burning, I wouldn't recommend that. I would just recommend doing a light steam over it. So that's what it looks like now. It's got some nice stretch to it. So now when I measure it, this is about 7.5 inches wide. So it took it and pretty much cut the fabric size in half. And that is going to be a result of the stitch length that you use. So if you use like a 2.5 or a 3, they're probably not going to shrink up as much. But the 4 is making it look like that. Okay, that is my tutorial on how to do shearing. And please let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I was just looking over my notes and I don't think that I missed anything, but if I missed a step or you have a question on anything at all, please let me know. And this is really fun. I hope if you haven't tried it yet, give it a try. Test it out with some different fabrics. See what you think. You can be so creative where you add some shearing into your garments. Like around the waist, I think is really cute. You might see like some sleeves where instead of putting a cuff, people are adding shearing on there. I think that that's really cute. So I like it. Give it a go. Let me know what you think. And with that, I'll let you get back to your sewing projects and happy sewing. Bye.